blocking my path, apparently bewildered by the big unfamiliar store. I felt sorry for her. Sorry for her. "Come along and I'll show you," I said. She tagged after me, and I left her staring at jars of mustard while I hurried back to Debbie. The cart was there with its load of groceries, but my small daughter was gone. That was the last time I had seen her. The rest was a miserable blur. I'd rushed about frantically, asking questions of strangers, looking down every aisle. I didn't see the woman in dark glasses or even think about her until later. The manager instituted a search and eventually called the police. No one remembered the woman who had spoken to me, and no one had seen Debbie lifted from the cart. Small children were going through the checkout stations with their mothers all the time, and no one had noticed Debbie. By the time the police arrived, the Saturday throngs in the store had already changed. We found no one then or later who knew anything. Debbie might have called out, or in spite of the way I'd warned her not to talk to strangers, she might not have remembered. She'd been such a loving, trusting little girl. The only clue we ever had was when a woman brought the police a trampled green plaid ribbon she had found in the parking lot. But no one had seen that particular little girl carried away. This was Saturday, and a small, crying child wouldn't be all that unusual. No ransom note ever came, no phone call. Debbie's great-grandmother on my mother's side was still alive and well-to-do, but she lived in Florida, and the family name was no household word. All of which left me with the other, even more terrible reasons for child snatching. The very fact that there seemed to have been a plan of sorts, with more than one person involved, was frightening. It was as though my child had been a special target, and these two had been watching us for an opportunity to take her. But why? For years I played the useless if-only game that never changes anything, and my sense of guilt was part of what I had to endure. You think you can't bear any more pain or loss, but you do. Time passes and the unbearable becomes something you can carry after all. At least my work helped. Because my parents were totally deaf, I'd always been interested in the problems of the hearing impaired, and since I was proficient in signing, I turned to the teaching of such children when I got out of college. I still taught in a private school for the deaf, giving affection to children who weren't mine, but who needed me. Sometimes I fantasized about marrying again, about having a home, a husband, and more children of my own. The longing was there, the hunger, but it was as though something in me had died with Debbie's disappearance, something that men shied away from uneasily. So I'd formed no new close attachments. Perhaps my sense of a terrible, unfinished business still haunted me and blocked me from life. Now, without warning, had come this phone call that opened all the doors to hope once more, and all those doors to despair that might follow. I wasn't sure I could go through that yo-yo course again. I turned off the bedroom lights and went into the living room to explain to my parents about the woman in Victoria who had called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. These days their telephone number appeared everywhere, as hadn't been the case when Debbie was taken. There had even been a recent magazine piece that surveyed the types of places from which children had been kidnapped over the last 10 years. I had been called by the writer, and Debbie's picture had been used for the article. Perhaps the woman in British Columbia had seen this piece. In the living room, my father sat on the sofa, a big man, tanned from his outdoor work, his hands idle in his lap for the moment, his eyes on the color TV picture. My mother sat in her small rocker with her usual book, glancing from its pages to the screen now and then. She always claimed that she could read and watch television at the same time and understand both, with no sounds to distract her. I stood in the doorway for a moment regarding them with love, remembering how much they cared about Debbie, how much they'd suffered with me. They'd been so proud of the way she began to chatter to them with her hands almost as soon as she learned to talk. Sometimes I wasn't sure whether Ameslan, the American Sign Language, was her first or second language. Dad saw my face and nudged Mother. I sat down and began to speak to them with my hands, my face, my shoulders. As soon as I'd explained, Dad indicated that I must call Victoria right away, and Mother nodded and agreed. I understood very well the loving dynamics between these two, though sometimes when I was younger I'd resented the way my mother always allowed my father to make the decisions. It had taken years of growing up for